Coming up on American Medicine Today, the mainstream media labeled anyone blaming the pandemic on a Chinese lab leak as a conspiracy theorist. However, even the latest evidence still points to that exact conclusion. Geo-political analyst Brandon Weichert shares the latest intel. Then, Bonnie was suffering from extreme back pain that only worsened over time. Knowing her career was in jeopardy, she sought out the Bonati Spine Institute and is now happily living pain-free. Finally, Dr. Bonati explains why it is so difficult for most surgeons to operate on the thoracic spine. What makes his methods and outcomes so unique? Find out coming up on American Medicine Today.
Featuring cutting-edge science and medical innovation, touching personal stories of recovery from pain, along with political, social, and healthcare issues plaguing our nation. This is American Medicine Today, brought to you by the Bonati Spine Institute and Alfred Bonati, MD.
Welcome to American Medicine Today. I'm Kimberly Bonati alongside Ethan Youker and world-renowned orthopedic surgeon Dr. Alfred Bonati. So when COVID-19 erupted from Wuhan under mysterious circumstances, the Communist Party of China covered it up and its existence for as long as they possibly could. But now it's apparent that there's a lot more to COVID than what the authorities are really wanting us to know. Joining us to discuss is Brandon Weichert, geopolitical analyst and author of Biohack, China's Race to Control Life. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Before we even get into COVID, you kind of detail how the Chinese communists have been really trying to dominate for decades. Can you explain?
Yeah, the Chinese have a vision called China Dream, and it's basically to become the world's leading superpower by the 100th year anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China, which would be the year 2049. And President Xi Jinping, who's the current leader of China, has outlined in his Made in China 2025 program, biotechnology as one of the key industries of the future that China must dominate. And I believe that coronavirus was created in a lab and that it was part of that Made in China 2025 program.
Well, and there still seems to be conflicting information regarding the origins of COVID. I mean, regardless, certain outlets and scientists and researchers and authorities, if you will, all the way back to the beginning, if you said it came from a lab or then there was the wet market and this and that, people said you were a conspiracy theorist. And then as of late in the past, 6 months to a year, it's come out that it seems pretty likely that it was developed, on purpose and leaked from a lab. What did you discover in your research?
Yeah. So basically, I do consulting with the Department of the Air Force normally, but the DoD more generally. And immediately when the disease came out, I had been covering, I used to write for American Greatness. So going back to 2017, I was covering the biotech beat in China, and I was covering all of what China's biotech sector was doing and the really scary and risky research they were engaged in, and how the U.S. government at times, U.S. pharmaceutical companies, U.S. investors and innovators were all helping China to develop these capabilities. And so when coronavirus hit, I immediately thought this had to be a gain-of-function test. So I reached out to contacts of mine in the U.S. intelligence community. They were using terms like biological 9/11. And I found in the process of writing the book, I found a Chinese military white paper going back to 2015 in which their top military scientists came up with a game plan for using, quote, weaponized coronaviruses against the Americans to collapse our medical and economic system in order to have greater political and strategic impacts. That's what COVID did to us. It didn't kill us all. The Chinese don't want to kill us all. They want to use us as a market. They wanted to weaken us, though, by getting rid of, I think, the Trump administration, which was the first American administration since Nixon to actually use trade against the Chinese. So they had to remove a real threat in Washington. The coronavirus was a perfect weapon to do it because it allowed us to turn on each other and then to vote him out of office and to put Joe Biden in power.
Communist China does incredibly terrible things, from organ harvesting to cloning projects to these pathogens. Can you elaborate a little more on that?
Because China, and I talked to a leading bioethicist, and I have an interview he gave with Stanford. He's at Stanford. He gave with the paper there, and he said that we in the West And he was saying this as if it's a bad thing. We in the West, we have the Hippocratic Oath, which basically tells medical researchers and doctors first do no harm. But in bioethics, there is a trump card, if you'll pardon the expression, and that is cures. If we can get a cure for a horrible disease, we will basically cut corners if necessary. And part of cutting corners is we won't do risky research here necessarily, but we'll offload the risky parts of research to a country like China that doesn't have any ethical or moral or legal standard. And that's what we've been doing. This is what Fauci did with gain of function tests. So you have things in China like a very robust human organ cloning program. They want to use also CRISPR-Cas9, which is the gene editing tool we created and we gave to China. They want to use that not just to edit out cancer and diseases, but to edit into their human genome over there desirable traits, which is why the U.S. intelligence community sent a warning to Olympian athletes going to Beijing, don't give over any samples to the Chinese Olympian commissions, because they're going to use that and as to take your DNA, put it in their gene bank, and basically try to program it into their soldiers to create super soldiers. I know that sounds funny, but I have the data in the book from reliable academic scientific journals proving that.
It doesn't sound funny at all. It sounds reminiscent of a certain dictator that took part in World War II and eugenics and all of this stuff. Back to Fauci, though, you brought him up. What are your thoughts on how complicit he was? How much did he know? How much of a part did he play in all of this? Because, he knew everything that he was doing. Yet, he'll go on 60 Minutes and say, oh, no, I knew nothing about it. What do you think?
Yeah, so I have a little bit of a personal history here. My wife is a geneticist, and she worked for a period of time at NIH for Dr. Collins and also had some affiliation with NIAID, Dr. Fauci's group. The first thing she said to me is this reminds me of a gain of function test we were funding at the University of North Carolina, which of course was the source of the gain of function research that Obama told Fauci and Collins, shut it down. They did shut it down at UNC. But what Fauci did, because he's so obsessed with getting this capability, he sent the research and the funding over to the Wuhan Institute of Virology via the EcoHealth Alliance. He said, yes, Mr. President, I'll stop doing it here. But he didn't tell anybody that he was going to do it in Wuhan Institute of Virology. Now, he did it not because he wanted to create a weapon, but because he just wanted to cut corners to get the money and the research faster. So he's evil in that he's a useful idiot of the Chinese Communist Party.
I don't know. I think he's sly as a fox, not really a useful
Well, he is
idiot.
sly. He is, but I don't think this was about weapons for him. This was just about getting research to as quickly as possible, and he didn't care how he got it, and he didn't care the Chinese were going to use it as a weapon against us.
Well, I kind of feel that way about HIV and AIDS, because with him at the helm, nothing's really been done to get at the root cause of it and try to come up with a way to eradicate it. It just seems to forever continue. I guess you can't make him the all-time bad guy, but he's a pretty awful guy.
He's certainly self-interested, and that is, and you see what that has led to, really damaging, horrible things for millions of our fellow Americans.
Now, a lot of people are saying that this could lead to World War III, and back to what you said at the top about their dream of global domination by 2049. Is it going to happen? Can we stop it, or are we just along for the ride, I guess? Well, I'll be speaking Mandarin in a few years.
As long as the Chinese keep buying our politicians like they have the Biden administration, as long as they keep attacking us in these unconventional ways that we don't perceive to be attacks, they're going to get what they want. If, though, they overstep and they actually physically attack Taiwan, that might trigger an unintended response from us. But short of that, no, they're going to keep doing what they want and manipulating us accordingly.
Well, hopefully we can get the Biden regime out and the Trump administration back in. Thank you for being on the program, Brandon Weichert.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for talking about this. It's extremely important to see what communist China is doing here in our country.
Thank you.
Make sure you stay tuned. Coming up after the break, a story of recovery.
2 neurosurgeons couldn't figure out anything that was wrong with me or what I would need surgery for. Dr. Bonati, without even seeing me, knew I was hurting, knew they could help me. First time I came in here was Monday, and today is Thursday. I've had 2 surgeries and am doing fantastic. I'm still in shock that I can walk. That's all within 4 days.
Visit askbonati.com. Welcome back to American Medicine Today. It's my pleasure to introduce to the program Bonnie Turon from Camillus, New York.
Thank you for having me.
So, Bonnie, why don't you tell us how you came to be in pain?
I just did degenerative issues. I had delivered mail for 23 years, worked hard, like 7 acres of property and a lot of working.
Yes.
And I think it's just degenerative. You know, I was 56.
So repetitious motions and lifting and bending, that kind of thing?
A lot of it. Yes, ma'am.
Is it safe to assume you progressively felt more pain as time went on?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I ended up, before I came to you, I was in a wheelchair for about a month.
And so
I literally couldn't walk.
You literally couldn't walk. Goodness.
Literally.
And so what do you do at that point? I mean, if your life is so heavily impacted, obviously, if you're in a wheelchair, I'm not sure that you're performing your job duties and then any daily activities at that point.
Right. I was at the end of my rope. I didn't know what to do. I had seen a doctor in Syracuse and he wanted to do pins and rods and screws and a year recovery, a year in a shell. And I'm thinking, I can't go that long without mowing my lawn. And I got to go back to work. I was working. I love my job. And my husband walked out of the office and said, I don't care where you go. I don't care where we have to travel. We're going to find somebody else. And a cousin had come down to see you when she was 21. She was actually one of your youngest patients, had unbelievable success. I literally was on the table telling that story as she was delivering her first child that they said she would never have. And Dr. Hirsch, I was like, wait, I remember her. So the whole thing was God-given. Really, really.
When you say that you were having pain, can you kind of explain, was it a radiating pain or was it localized to one area? Where on your body were you feeling that discomfort?
Mostly my left leg. I couldn't lift it up. I wore the side off my shoes. When I was delivering mail, I would go through a pair of sneakers a month. I would wear the side right off the shoe.
And
because I couldn't pick my leg. The pain was indescribable.
When you're saying that you wore through the shoes so quickly, were you experiencing drop foot at that time?
Yes. Unbeknownst to me, I just thought I was in so much pain I couldn't pick up my leg and I was just dragging it. I'm an active person, delivering mail and mowing, and we have 7 acres of property. And I was truly I was at the end of my rope. I didn't know what to do. And I had done a lot of research on Bonati. I made a lot of phone calls. You guys gave me, I believe, 25 references. I actually took the 2 professional football players that literally picked up the phone and said to me, one guy said to me, honey, I don't even have to tell you, just go. You're so blessed. And everyone I talked to maybe 15 other people, and every single one said, oh, you can't go fast enough. And as Providence would have it, I almost believe today was the day Dr. Bonati called me, 2012, honest to goodness.
Of 2012. When you received the phone call from him and he was able to tell you he believed that he could help you, what was that realization like, considering other doctors were telling you you needed invasive hardware fusion surgery?
He literally called me at home and said, I just got your MRI. He said, we can help you. After I stopped crying, we decided that we would book a flight. We booked a flight that afternoon. We were there, I believe it was 10 days later. I walked in. He greeted me. He put his arm around my shoulder. My husband was in tears. Here we are in Florida. I was in tears. He was in tears. Dr. Bonati kind of poked him on the shoulder and said, we got this. We're going to take care of her. Unbelievable. Everybody was amazing. Amazing.
We utilize something called conscious IV sedation. So the patients are sedated, but they're aware and they're allowed to watch, and you're allowed to have a loved one in the operating room with you. What was that like for you?
It was amazing. I'm a real research person, a real techie person. And when they said that they wanted me conscious, I talked to everyone. We had a couple really good laughs. At one point, maybe an hour into the surgery, Dr. Bonati said, okay, get up on your hands and knees. And I looked at him and I said, not before you see God for lunch. And he said, honey, no, get up on your hands and knees. And I had a little, I must have made a face. I had a little pain. Lay back down, another hour. And I got off the table. He literally, I had a sundress. He said, get in your sundress. I want you to walk a mile today. I was like, well, that's probably never going to happen. I went back to the hotel. He called me at 8 p.m. as I'm sobbing. I had walked a mile.
Oh, and those were happy tears, right? Not painful tears.
Oh, yeah. I can still feel all that. It was, even though it was 12 years ago or 11 years ago, it was so profound. And so it was just amazing. The whole thing. I got off the table and he watched me walk down the hall. He said, now come back. And I'm literally looking at him like, yeah, this isn't going to happen. My husband was sitting there with his mouth just, oh, are you serious? And then I had 2 more surgeries. I had stenosis and vertebrae that had herniated again, and some canal issues with my hip. And he just fixed them all. It was unbelievable, really.
All these years later, how are you?
Better than ever. I literally to this day still walk 5 miles a day. Swear.
5
It's
miles.
amazing. Every day. And he said to me when I walked out, he patted me on the shoulder and said, walk, walk, walk. And I said, okay, I'll. And someone called me like a year later and asked how I was doing. And I said, I'm walking 5 miles a day. And they said, are you serious? And I said, yes, ma'am. I think it was almost like, it was just like such a challenge. I hadn't been walking I had walked so hard for so long. And then to be able to walk, I would literally get down to the end of my street and say, okay, God, thank you.
It is such a pleasure to talk to someone that has been through so much and kind of saw their life kind of fading before them in a wheelchair. Ma'am. You come down, you have the Bonati Spine Procedures, and you're immediately up and walking. Thank you so much for sharing your story of recovery with us. Did you have to wear any sort of back brace when you left? Were you told you had to?
You guys sent me home with Band-Aids on my back. Honest to good. We went to the hotel, and the hotel where we were staying had a lot. Oh, my goodness. There was 20 Bonati patients there. And we had dinner with them every single night, 14 days. The stories were unbelievable. My story was nothing compared to a couple stories. A man had fallen off a building.
Oh, wow.
It was God-given. I could go on and on. I could talk to you all day about this experience, the conscious sedation, being able to talk, being able to see it, hold still, it was so unbelievable. Unbelievable.
You're a living testament to the fact that the Bonati Spine Procedures are a true fix for spine pain, whether it be neck, mid-back, or lower back. Thank you so much for sharing your miraculous story of recovery with us.
And thank you for Dr. Bonati for putting his arm around my shoulder.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
And to find out if you're a candidate, visit askbonati.com.
I think everybody was shocked, like, really? You had surgery today? I had a drain tube. I was at my desk doing payroll for 200 employees, worked till night, got up, went to bed.
Actually, the recovery was great. I mean, I really immediately felt the difference. I was able to go back to work within a couple of days.
The progress after each procedure was amazingly good. The recovery, all told, has been phenomenal.
The pain that I was suffering is gone. I can go back to work in like 3 days.
The surgeries that I had, actually, I recovered very easily from, I would say. I actually went to work the following afternoon.
That afternoon, when it was done, I actually felt so much better already.
6 days after surgery, I was back in the gym, slowly but surely working my way back to fighting, back to basically 100% of fighting, So 6 days, and everybody wasn't all like, "Didn't you just get out of surgery?" I'm like, "Yeah, I feel great." And like, "Okay, let's see how you do." And I was rolling with everybody, and I'm in the advanced class, so that sounds a lot right there.
First time I came in here was Monday, and today is Thursday. I've had 2 surgeries and am doing fantastic. I'm still in shock that I can walk. That's all within 4 days.
Bonati succeeds where others fail. Welcome back to American Medicine Today. So, Dr. Bonati, we wanted to talk about what we do at the Bonati Spine Institute. Why don't we start off by talking about how you operate on all three levels of the spine, the cervical, thoracic, and lumbar. Why is that different than what other places do?
I do believe that the technique that we developed for so many years is paying back.
Mm-hmm.
The results that we have, they are not on the market. So then we start very slowly to transfer some of the knowledge that we have in the lower back
Mm-hmm.
and we start to create the same approach and see if we will have the same results in cervical spine.
All right.
And the results were even.
Mm-hmm.
So when we saw that one, then we adventured to the most dangerous area, that is the thoracic spine.
The thoracic. Why is that such a dangerous area?
Well, the cervical spine and the lumbar spine, the canal is wide, and they are working with practically with nerves only.
Mm-hmm.
The thoracic spine is practically in a very tight spot in between 6, 7, maybe 5, 6, 6, 7, 7, 8 of the thoracic vertebrae. Mm-hmm. The canal there is very tight. And any type of a pressure there or any type of manipulation there can create an incredible type of a problems on the spinal cord. Mm-hmm. And once the spinal cord is affected, then paralysis is the result of it. Mm-hmm. And then what they do is they remove a rib from a patient. They distend the other ribs.
Mm-hmm.
Then they practically collapse the lung, and then they penetrate anterior the spine.
And you're talking about others, not what you do, although you do tackle...
I'm just describing what is on the market.
Sure.
And when they do that, they do a procedure that is not really involving the canal.
Okay.
It's involving the anterior part. But the surgery is extremely complicated.
I would imagine.
Because you need to have a cardiovascular individual there, a pulmonary individual there, and then you need to have the orthopedic or the neurosurgeon.
So to tackle the back, you're saying they enter through the front, they remove the rib, they deflate the lung, and they tackle from the side now the spine instead of taking the direct approach like you, which is going in through the back and direct to that spot without devices.
Yeah, that's correct. At the time that we develop better instruments and better type of tools that they can carve the bone very, very much in very tiny pieces and allow the penetration of the canal with a minimal invasion, then allowed us to decompress that area, and the results are fantastic.
How long have you been doing that?
Well, we're doing that one for around 10 years now.
So you treat all sections of the spine and others don't. You're saying what you do is much less invasive and for the betterment of the patient, especially since it's the direct approach and you're not having to mess up the internal organs to get there. What are some of the ailments, the conditions that you treat at the Institute?
When you have a sympathetic dystrophy.
Okay, RSD.
And the sympathetic dystrophy is nothing more than the compression of a nerve. And then a reaction of sympathetic, parasympathetic become an issue because you touch that part of the nerve. And when that happens, the patients have sometimes situations where the extremities will swell up.
Right.
They become totally red and extremely painful.
Correct.
These people cannot even stand up to stay in bed because as soon as you touch with the sheet or the covers, they cannot tolerate that. In the past, I heard that patients that they have this problem, they got their extremities amputated.
Unbelievable that
But the
people
problem
would
is-
go through those extreme measures.
Well, when the pain is so terrible and the situation is never disappear and is permanent, days and days over, then these patients sometimes are in a situation of very close to commit suicide. I have an experience many years ago with a person who was a young girl, and I think was on her 20s, 28 or something like that.
Yeah.
And we were visiting Amsterdam, and they invite us to do some type of a conference there. And the father of this girl came over and said to me, "Can you see my daughter?" In Amsterdam, in Holland, you have the possibilities to commit euthanasia, and then this girl signed already for euthanasia. After I talked to her for a couple of minutes, she was extremely upset, a lot of pain. I asked for an MRI, and as soon as I look at the MRI, I say, "Yes, we can help her." And then she didn't believe.
She probably thought it was going to be more of the same of what she had heard, that nothing could be done.
The father brought her to the United States. We decompressed the 4-5 level. We decompressed the chain of sympathetic area. And the patient had, in 1 week, she looked so happy and so young. That was unbelievable.
Yeah.
These things in the spine, they have a radical reaction if you really know what you're doing. If you understand the problem, you can solve it, and the body reacts in an incredible way. Usually people who not even able to walk, they walk.
It's really miraculous what the Bonati Spine Procedures can do. And you also treat things like herniated discs, slip discs, bulge nerves, stenosis, spondylolisthesis, spondy. We'll get to that in another episode, but thank you so much for watching American Medicine Today. To find out if you're a candidate for the exclusive and patented Bonati Spine Procedures, visit askbonati.com. Thanks for watching, and check out Rumble, where you can see previous episodes of American Medicine Today. If you have any comments or questions, contact us at the numbers below, or you can tweet at Dr. Bonati using the hashtag American Medicine Today or hashtag AMT. We would like to hear from you. And to catch previous episodes of American Medicine Today, search the Bonati Spine Institute on YouTube and Rumble.